Tēnā koutou katoa, anei mau ko taku hoa ko Te Koha Wihongi, he mahita ia no konei, he tangata whenua koe i konei e hoa.
Kia ora koutou.
Kei hea tāu.
Kia ora koutou katoa, oino e hokahako ki ngā mihi ki taku nei hoa, te rangatira e Brent, ngā mihi atu ki a koe, kua tatu mai nei ki Wainganui kia mātou, o Awarua nei. Nō reira ai, kei roto mātou i tēnei o ngā riu o te Awarua, ki roto hoki te whare o Ururangi Marae, e wānanga ana i nei kaupapa nō reira mihi atu nei ki a koe.
Kia ora koe. We are going to talk today, whānau, about Te Reo, well, we're actually going to have a broad talk about Te Reo Māori education, the attitudes and viewpoints of the community towards Te Reo Māori and our perception of it, our experience of it. And we hope you enjoy. Whakarongo mai, titiro mai. Kia ora. I just want to hear about your role as a Māori teacher and actually how you're seeing the progression on the ground of Māori language with our young people. We hear about the kaupapa of Te Reo Māori primarily through the media as a sort of a top-down. Yep. These are the initiatives by Te Taurewhiri. This is what the government's doing or not doing, and we're arguing about that. We hear a lot about compulsion in schools, and I can see both sides of the compulsion argument.
Yep.
You know, when people say making things compulsory doesn't work, and then people will say, well, lots of things are compulsory and that's life, and they do work generally. So I can see both. But I think it's really interesting if we can actually just talk to teachers who deal with young Māori people. Young New Zealand people.
Yep.
Because it's not, only a Māori issue directly. Yeah, so my question then might be, how it's a big, broad question, but where are we at in your experience with Te Reo Māori and our young people? How effectively are we transmitting it with the limitations that we know we all have, and the community has, and the parents and all of that? And do you see it as being, this is maybe oversimplifying it, successful in that are you positive about where it's going, where it's at? What are the big challenges that you experience? What are the good things that you're finding success with that you're excited about? So kōrero mai.
Kia ora, bro.
Yeah.
Tēnā koe. Good question. All right, to start off, I can only really speak about my perception of it from a mainstream, if we're looking at schooling, from a mainstream setting.
Yeah.
Then I'll probably talk a little bit about kura kaupapa afterwards, and kohanga reo and all that, but I'll just see if I can condense this whole kōrero. It's a big kōrero.
Yeah, you're right.
So for me, the state of it at the moment is that through media, it looks good.
Yeah.
So through our media waves, it looks good. What people, if you're not inside the engine room of Te Reo Māori and the development and, the growth of Te Reo Māori, then it could look really, really healthy at the moment.
Like problem solved.
Problem solved. I mean, when I turn the TV on, Te Reo Māori is thriving. When I'm at home and I watched, I can flick the TV onto Reo, I can put it onto Channel 1, you have Te Karere playing on there from time to time, Māori TV, Irirangi Māori as well. There's a lot of broadcasting of Te Reo Māori throughout our motu. Hoi anō, for me it's called Aua Tangata Rāno. It's those same people that are doing all of that mahi. It's a couple of people behind the camera, it's a few people doing radio talkback, but you hear it all over the motu.
Right.
So that can sometimes, for me, create this illusion that Te Reo Māori is everywhere.
Right.
That's what I feel.
Yep.
So to come back to the classroom, it's reflected in there. It's still the same. It's the same thing in a mainstream setting.
What do you mean by that? What is the same thing? What do you mean?
Where even the students have a belief that Te Reo Māori is healthy until they come to the classroom and realise, none of them can actually call Reo Māori. And the perception around fluency is also another area where Māori, some Māori have. They hold this kind of, it appears like it's all good, being able to speak very minimally about in Te Reo Māori, being able to say my name and my pepeha is the modern fluency in Te Reo Māori.
Wow.
And that's what I'm finding. Fluency for Māori is different to what we're in the engine room of teaching it. So, and as language people, I don't know whether I'm overcritical, super critical of where they are, but the general consensus is if you can do your pepeha, you can do a karakia, sing a few waiata, have an idea of where certain conversations may be going, that's fluency. In Te Reo.
So the definition of fluency has shifted, almost like it's better than nothing, kind of a low...
Absolutely.
The bar for fluency is dropping.
I think so. I think the bar for fluency is dropping, not just at a conversational level, but also at that higher taumata level. Sure. Not because of numbers. I'm not talking about the numbers game, of our diminishing kaumātua and kuia from our marae. It's not about that. It's about the depth of kōrero. So I'll sit down with certain kaumātua at hui, and they're super critical of the kinds of kōrero that are floating through, whether or not that's appropriate for this time. There was a couple of incidences that happened at the Koroneihana where Ngāpuhi kaumātua were challenged. And there was a lot of kōrero around them being a little too gung-ho, and that the kaupapa of the day where there was an issue that happened was premature, and it needed certain kaumātua of a certain level of mita or caliber. Understanding or caliber of tikanga and the ability to articulate their kupu around the kaupapa o te wā.
Right.
In marae now,
so let me clarify.
So it's not just what I'm saying. It's not just at our kohungahunga and tamariki level.
Right.
It's right through.
Right.
Where you will go to certain hui, and the first kai kōrero will stand up, could be a kaumātua, and he'll say everything under the sun. And then you hear other kaumātua saying, waiho he kōrero mamata, don't eat it, kaua kai katoa ngā kōrero. But we're finding now that you walk into a marae and kaumātua would greet manuhiri, but also thank their own kai karanga, thank their own kai, whereas whether it's just our own tikanga from Awarua here, but those are for the manuhiri.
Right.
We don't acknowledge our own.
Yes.
And so that's why there's no point in me as a manuhiri saying tēnā koe, it's already been done, and they've already done it. And it's those levels of reo at that higher level that it's also an area that may need a bit of exploring or conversating around the effectiveness of our reo at all levels. And I mean, I don't want to say I'm attacking anybody about those particular things, but I won't say that it isn't. Yes. I won't say that it's not true. Where you have a lot of kaumātua. Now, I've been in hui where kaumātua have up and walked out because the speaker lost his way.
Wow. So they protest with their feet beat the feet.
We'll just leave.
Do you think? I wondered if there's also like we just mentioned, the definition of fluency has dropped.
It has.
with the general ability.
Yep.
So if you can get over that first hurdle, you're kind of celebrated quite a lot.
Absolutely.
And whether it's self-celebration or others praising, and that is what it is. But like you're saying, it's at all levels. And I think too, from what you're describing, that it's actually not just about the skill of the reo itself or the speaker, it's the tikanga side. How much can you withhold? And
how frequent and how often we're speaking te reo, because it's only by practicing it a lot that you become a lot more sharper in the way that you
like anything, isn't it?
Like anything. And that's one of those things for it's a possibility that with our dwindling number of kaumātua, how often do kaumātua get to sit down together and have those engaging conversations in te reo about tikanga, about whai kōrero, about all of those things. They do happen, I'm not saying they don't, but they're happening less frequently. And as a result, those leftover kaumātua on marae, are sort of running on E, really.
And also they're being leaned on heavily, and I'm thinking of Papa Known or Matauri Bay. And as the example that popped into my head, there's fewer and fewer of them as the time goes on, so they're getting leaned on so heavily to transmit it as much as they can, because all of our days are numbered.
Well, that could be a reason why they're doing all the kōrero now.
That's
probably that could be one of the reasons why you'd go to a marae and one kaumātua will do everything, rather than share it out, because
He's the one who can do it.
That's right, and they're growing used to being the one that has to cover all bases. So there could be that, but that in itself is also, highlights the state of Te Reo.
Okay.
For me as a kaiako Māori, we can talk about all of those issues and the state of it, but then, there's that question, what do we do now?
Yeah. How do you feel the hiakai mo Te Reo? How do you feel the state of the desire for Māori people, and I'm generalising, there's going to be exceptions and extremities, but what's your feeling on our desire to learn and use our language, generally?
So generally, for me and the people that I've engaged with, and it's a diverse group of people, they all want to engage in Te Reo.
Yeah.
Everyone just wants to learn Te Reo.
Yeah.
All walks of life.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, a lot of non-Māori I'm seeing are coming out of the woodwork and showing interest in Te Reo Māori. Especially at our tamariki and our taitamariki age group.
Oh, really?
Our high school students are happy to engage. In fact, a lot more Pākehā are engaging in Te Reo learning.
So there's a shift in the general perception of its value, right?
I think so.
And that's got to be a good thing.
I think so. I'm not sure whether that's how it is across the board, but we're seeing a lot of people showing interest. There's talks of wānanga happening all over the country with a lot of non-Māori engaging and learning Te Reo Māori.
Right.
But also all our tamariki Māori are all still in the mix as well.
Yeah.
So I think there's, now more than ever, there is this huge growth of people in Aotearoa that are keen.
It's wider.
Definitely. It's a lot more wider. It is a lot more wider.
Yeah.
And so the questions that really sort of come up for me is how do we tiaki, how do we, nurture that development of our tauiwi whānau that are interested in learning Te Reo Māori.
Yeah, it's interesting because my view for some time, well maybe a long time, about the Māori language, I try to, at least every now and then, if not sort of constantly, is look at the big picture and the trajectory. And we obviously went through the process of, and continue to go through a process of colonisation. That's an ongoing thing. The language took a big hit, and it's had its revival, Māori renaissance, some people will call it, since sort of 1970s and 80s. It sort of started accelerating. But obviously in the generation or two before that, it took a major dip, and then it's coming back. But I think it's about New Zealand it being a taonga mo Aotearoa whānui.
I think
that's
so.
how I like to see it. Yes, we have as Māori, we have personal connections, so it takes on a different level, and that's cool. But I don't like to engage in the whose language is it debate or even process of thought. I just don't want to see it like that. Not because I'm a Pākehā also, not because of my own biological family makeup, but because of, actually to me it's about what things are going to make it what's the word? Not just survive, but flourish.
Yep. So the sustainability of
sustainability and realistic, and maybe the cynic might say, "Oh, that's just thinking strategically. How can I and hey, there's an element of truth in that. If it works, then I'm all for it too.
Yep.
But actually, that's actually the real test of its survival or value is when it's valuable to everyone.
Absolutely.
So when you say you're noticing more and more non-Māori engaging, at whatever level they're engaging, because I know non-Māori who are fluent, and fluent in a real sense, not just like they know a pepeha or whatever.
Yep.
So I just think that's amazing and really positive. I've also encountered negative feeling from Māori about that. They won't voice it because there's something that stops them going, oh, somebody's actually learnt it, I better not say anything bad about that.
Yeah.
But I can feel it and I can intuit that there is sometimes a feeling of, sometimes it might even, dare I say it, be a feeling of jealousy. There's moments where I've suspected, because when a non-Māori can speak Māori and a Māori can't, that's a awkward feeling for and I've encountered that. But then sometimes it's deeper than that again, where it's like, oh, this is another form of colonization. They took our land and now they're taking it out. It gets political and it gets really wide.
Absolutely.
But for me personally, and whether you agree with this or I don't know, you can maybe say, but I think Te Reo Māori and even tikanga Māori, there is no line that you draw. These are treasures of our country.
Kia
Our
ora.
country is I say bicultural, although of course we know it's multicultural in people, but the country as we know it was built biculturally, and then we added different ethnicities, and that's great. But and so I think that the sooner we accept that in a real way, not just we have to endure it or we have to put up with it. I mean, embrace it, and then Maori language becomes everybody's. I personally believe that that's a really good thing. How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
How do you feel about who owns Maori, for lack of a better way of saying it?
Well, who owns Te Reo Maori?
Yes. Yes is what I mean, sorry.
Everyone owns Te Reo Maori, in my opinion. Everyone has the right to kōrero Te Reo Maori, and I hope that everyone does. Well, everyone Aotearoa, even through the expanse of the world, can find some kind of joy of speaking Te Reo Maori, and that for me is the biggest goal, is to create or try and promote that positive disposition towards learning Te Reo Maori and speaking Te Reo
And
Maori.
using it,
And the more weight we add to it, and the more grief and the more friction that this taonga has attached to it, all of these feelings of guilt or jealousy that's attached to Te Reo, these are all the things that possibly could either drive someone to want to speak Te Reo or destroy it within them.
Yes.
So for me, it's about building that positive disposition, or maintaining a positive disposition towards speaking and learning Te Reo Maori, and all of the baggage that comes with it, making mistakes and all of those sorts of things, which are common things that I find that Maori struggle with learning Te Reo Maori. I don't know whether or not it's just in taitokerau, or whether it just comes with aging, but there's this sort of fear of making mistakes. And for Maori and Te Reo, and for some I've spoken to, it's a taonga, it's precious, it's tapu, it's got all of these things associated with it.
He taonga nā te atua.
But all of those things, he taonga no te atua. But though when you talk like that, you're afraid of dropping it.
Yes.
You're afraid of making mistakes. You're afraid, and
you're on eggshells around it.
You're on eggshells, and that doesn't create a positive disposition towards Te Reo Maori. And I've been using that word positive disposition towards developing Te Reo Maori, because I believe that whatever it is in life, whether it's teachers or parents promoting a positive outlook towards something, even sports, Dad could be overweight, obese, loved watching sport, played it in primary school, doesn't do any sporting himself, but promotes that positive disposition towards it, then his children are more likely to engage with it, because it's positive.
No, I totally agree that it's very rare as human beings that we learn things well that we don't like, or that there's negativity, a big dose of negativity attached. I mean, you and I have had this discussion for a while now, for a few years maybe even by now, of Māori coming with all that baggage of colonial history, colonial loss, the shame, whakamā, and resentment that is part of that. Whether you're aware of it or not, it's there. To me, it's we should acknowledge all of those negativities so we can overcome them. Because you cannot overcome something that you're unaware of that's still there. I mean, that's just my view. That if we can go, yes, we are, and I, like you're saying, and myself as a foreign language learner as well, I can guarantee you that it's not specifically Maori or Northern or whatever about the age thing and being difficult to learn. That is universal around languages. Māori have the added challenge though of the shame and resentment and colonial history that comes as an emotional attachment. And this is the bit that I think too few of us recognise to then deal with. And so what happens is when those big challenges loom up, and the challenge is not actually obvious, it's a feeling. When you feel like, if you feel that your language was ripped away from you, maybe in the previous generation even, and then you go into learning in that frame of mind, you're going in with a feeling of resentment, you're going in with a feeling of anger, and as soon as you hit the inevitable challenge of it, because learning a language, any language, is difficult, then it's really easy, you're on the verge of giving up before you even started. Because you're like, stuff this, I don't want to know. And then you've got this internal anger about why you're even having to learn it. Now, when you learn a language by choice, a foreign language, whether it's English as a foreigner or for us Spanish or Japanese or whatever, we don't have any of that baggage. go and if I want to learn Japanese or Bahasa Indonesia,
That's-
I just learn it. I don't care about what anything else. And this is what we as Māori, I believe, don't recognise. We have all this baggage. And so do you feel that A, exists, and B, has an effect on our learning? And what's your feeling, even as a classroom teacher with young people?
Whether or not that's the case or not, I can say that between when I look at the demographic in my classrooms, students that are Maori and Pākehā or non-Maori, it could be PI, they could be Pacific Islander, Indian communities from our Asian communities. Those non-Maori engage well. And it's possibly because of that, that lack of baggage and historical grievances that they're overcoming as whānau. Which in another sense is kind of ironic for children, because our Māori tamariki carry it at a very young age. If that's the case, if that's really one of the reasons why Māori is struggling with real development, you can see it at a very young age, which generally means that there's some kind of disposition at home that's been fostered into the home to promote that within our tamariki. They're not born feeling these ways, they learn these ways, their attitudes. And so our tamariki are coming in with that. So whether that's the case or not, I don't know. But what I do know is that our non-Māori children are engaging a lot easier in Te Reo Māori in a mainstream classroom. And I don't know why that is. Whether or not it's that, whether they've just developed a different way of learning, which I don't believe. That non-Māori children, have better
strategy or whatever.
No, definitely not. It's something for me that's come from home. There is mamai there is whakamā there, there's all of those things. Māori like to do things right as well, so it could be that fear of not doing things tika.
Are you talking culturally tika, or just getting the language right?
Just getting the language right.
Yeah, that's quite universal too, I would say.
Just getting the language right, but there's also those historical things that are weighing there. Not that I see any animosity between Māori and non-Māori students in class. They are more than happy to work with each other.
Equally.
But possibly it's what you're saying, there's a feeling there that they're feeling, and they're not sure what it is, but they're coping and trying to deal with that feeling within
And
our
of course,
classes.
language, Te Reo Māori is not independent and separate from Māori life and New Zealand life. So it's not like we can extract out Te Reo Māori and talk about it as this standalone thing. It's connected to what those young people, learners, are seeing in their communities, on television, through media, their perceived racism in the community, real or not,
all those
socio-economic lifestyle.
Absolutely,
and then
they
of
all
course,
come into play.
Yeah, we call ourselves Māori, we are Māori, and then when we have to learn our language, which we either consciously or subconsciously may feel as our birthright that we shouldn't have had to work for, that, again, to come back full circle, that's what I think is a heavy weight on us. Adults too. I mean, adults more perhaps because they're more aware of the political history.
Absolutely.
But like you're even implying, by the time they get to high school, they've had 13, 14 odd years of absorbing Māori reality. And that's different for urban, for individuals and families and all that. So no, it's an interesting topic. So looking forward,
it's also something that they're having to cope with at home, because mum and dad possibly have dealing with these things as adults.
Possibly, I would.
So being able to develop Te Reo Māori, and create this positive disposition towards it becomes a struggle, because you mentioned socioeconomic issues. I can't worry about teaching my children Te Reo when I can't put food on the table.
It's not a high priority for many of our families.
Absolutely,
right?
And that's a reality for many of our families. But from a teacher's point of view, because there's a lot of those things that we can support our tamariki to develop. I don't know, skills so that they don't fall into that financial hardships later on.
So they have more
there's
time and energy perhaps for things that are considered almost a luxury. If you're struggling to turn the lights on and put food on, put breakfast on the table, I think understandably Te Reo Māori is sort of down the list, right?
Or if you're bitter, just your attitude, towards life in general,
it definitely, I think what we can agree on definitely is that it requires positive energy to to engage in it and then be successful in it.
Absolutely.
Because I don't know the stats around, if they exist, around the number of people who enter into learning Māori and don't stick with it. I mean, there'll be a range, I'm sure. Some go right through and become expert even, or even get to, like yourself, become teachers. Of, you've grown up with Māori, you've also learnt it in academic settings, and now you're teaching it in an institution called school, So that there's people who go all the way in that direction, but I'm curious to know what the fall-off rate is, and then the reasons, not because it's important. I mean, it's not important to know, but I'm just, like I say, I'm curious about that. So moving forward, how do you feel about Māori and as far as the fluency? And you and I think, and me as a language learner as well, feel that the definition of fluency is maybe a bit higher than some of us are. Yeah, they're really good at Māori because they can do something that's rote learned. I mean, that's a low level of fluency. How do you feel about our ability?
It's not fluency.
No,
it's not fluency.
It's not.
Fluency is being able to read, write, and speak, and articulate your thoughts, and be able to ask questions, respond to questions, simple and complex.
And even then, like fluency is not a black and white term. There's no line you reach. No. Like I don't know if you know about this. In international language learning thing, there's this ABC, A1, C1. It goes A1, A2, B1. B2, C1, C2.
Yep.
Those are they're clearly defined fluency levels.
Yes.
So
A is your lower
A1
level.
is your beginner.
So that's where you'll be an A1 fluency.
And C2 is when you can decipher complex arguments.
Absolutely.
Basically, that is the ultimate in proficiency. Because
for me, if you're fluent, in my opinion, then you can ask someone in Te Reo Māori simple questions. These are simple. A1 should be, I rongo koe mo te ru whenua I o tautahi. That's direct, straight, simple. Did you hear about the earthquake in Christchurch?
See, actually, that's quite. I would consider, and I'm no expert.
But in English, what is it in English?
Yeah, to translate it?
No, just to be able to say, is that high?
No, that's higher than A1. A1 is definitely I'm starting on my numbers and my greetings and my pronunciation. Yeah, this is where you're getting off the ground. It's beginner. And then
I should know that. I'm a school teacher.
Well, no, we don't use this European system. This is like an international language learning system that's not common in Aotearoa. I don't hear anyone talking about it. But I kind of find it useful for my own language learning. Where would I be? For me in Māori, I mean, if C2 is the ultimate, that's where you can articulate complex thoughts and respond to complex statements. That's C2, right?
So, I'm not. So tell me, if I tell someone I'm fluent in Te Reo Māori, what's your expectation?
My expectation for my definition of the word fluent is that you can hold at least the basic conversation, which talks about everyday activities and things and about yourself and your environment, your work, whatever it may be. You can have a conversation.
Now, I agree. That's where I believe it is
now,
as well.
Does that include, let's talk about the metaphysics of religion? And no. That's when it's getting into complex, deep thoughts, philosophical stuff, academic. Like if you're required to use your second language or third language, whatever it is, in a university, in a lecture setting, where you're going to go into a university at let's say a PhD level class and deliver a talk on a kaupapa, you're going to need C1 minimum, if not C2, which is as high as it gets. I certainly don't have that in Māori. If someone says to me, are you fluent, I have to check what they mean, because the question is not clear, actually.
I think that's something that we all need to check. It's something that we all need to be mindful of, because if you tell yourself that you're fluent at something, or you tell yourself you're great at something,
you'll stop learning.
Well, you'll stop learning, and after a while, you start to become complacent with that, and then then you find yourself sitting in a wānanga, and then you realise
you're out of your depth.
You are, you're a little.
And I mean, I'm realistic. I know a lot of Māori would balk at this A1, B2 business because it seems so very academic.
We don't use that, but there's this conversation around native Te Reo, native speakers of Te Reo versus fluency. So there is that conversation. There's a lot of kōrero around, what makes a native speaker, what does a native speaker sound like, look like, speak like, as opposed to being fluent in Te Reo. Because you can learn fluency, but then native is, you listen to certain native speakers of Reo versus in comparison to people that have been
a very good language learner.
Very good language learner. There are differences. You can definitely
absolutely hear. And I think what I've seen positive in recent times, even in my lifespan of learning Māori, which is about 20 years,
Yep.
I've seen a positive shift towards accepting the reality of language learners.
Yep.
Because 20 years ago, when I was a beginner language learner, it was still very much alive, that kind of derisive book Māori.
Yeah.
By native speakers, or maybe even people who didn't speak Māori at all were judging it. I mean, they were judging it too.
Yeah, city Māoris.
City Māori, and
Māori.
the body language, if they weren't telling it to your face, because occasionally you'd get told to your face, you didn't take much to work it out because of the body language. Like they'd start, like they would just show that they weren't impressed at all.
Am I sitting? I'm not.
So anyway, what I've seen as a positive is some of it's just inevitable. The native speakers have got one foot in the grave.
Yep.
In realistic sense. So there's just less native speakers now than there was 20 years ago. So that's part of the reason. But I think also, I like to think at least, that attitudes are shifting. Attitudes are realizing that, bro,
I've heard we all heard the old statement that Te Reo Māori won't get you anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
That's untrue now, and we know that's untrue. There was a time where you would never even speak about Te Reo Māori to a careers officer and where it could take you.
What the value
what was the value of my reo? Careers were pitched on your literacy and numeracy and your knowledge of the sciences, and that would determine success in this world. And in many instances, that's still true.
And if you went back 50 years, they were saying, try to lose Māori to have a better chance.
That's right. So now it's like, if you want to get into the police force, Te Reo Māori will open the door a lot easier.
Even law.
And social care and
teaching, for sure.
Absolutely, where they're finding that they're engaging a lot with Te Reo Māori, with people that speak Te Reo Māori. So it's not just in a small Māori arena where Te Reo Māori may get you a job on Te Karere, or if you're lucky.
There's only a dozen people employed.
That's right.
In the whole country.
And that's probably a really good thing about having so much outlets, media outlets. They do provide employment for people that speak Te Reo Māori, despite what I was saying about that earlier on.
But what you said earlier on is an interesting thing, because it's a positive for employment opportunity and career and using your Māori with your colleagues. Yeah. But it's also perpetuating this myth that it's coming down to the community.
Yeah, it's how you take it.
You can walk into any community and it's there, because it's not the reality yet. God willing, it will be. But no, I think so. So to summarise, let's wrap this up about where it's going in the current state that we're in, and then more. Let's say, where do you see Te Reo? Let me ask you a very simple, clear question. Where is Te Reo Māori in 10 years from now? Where is Te Reo Māori in 20 years from now?
In 20 years' time from now, if you're talking what A1, A2, B1...
you don't have to relate it to that, but just your thoughts.
For my opinion, Te Reo would be spoken a lot more wider throughout Aotearoa and the world. All the barriers that currently, argue for it not being something that they talk about it being compulsory within schools, and they play around with those particular words, whether it's compulsory or whether it's core and all of that sort of kōrero. In 20 years' time, those people won't be around. And I don't mean to say it like that, but your Don Brashers and people that are blatantly against...
An anti.
Yeah, just anti-Te Reo Māori being publicised or broadcasted sort of everywhere. They'll be gone in 20 years' time. Right. Back 10 years, I think that it's going to be halfway to there. There's going to be a lot of... Currently, there's positive perception towards it from the young peoples. So 20 years' time, these young people...
So the balance will tip, is what you're suggesting?
I think it's already tipping.
Yeah, right.
The balance is already tipping.
So the result of the balance tipping will become very apparent. Will be very apparent.
I've yet to walk into somebody in their 20s or 30s that was against it.
Right.
So if we really look at the media, what it's broadcasting now, and the people that are, that look for the cons of Te Reo Māori being a part of our identity as Aotearoa New Zealanders, those people are running out. They're very few and thin.
Well, they're in the grave. I mean, this might sound...
They're a foot in the grave as well.
This might sound distasteful, but what I was about to say was, and I say this tongue-in-cheek, don't be offended, anybody, is they're in the grave next to the native speakers.
They are.
You know what I mean? Like, and what I'm saying is the sad side is our native speakers have going with time. Yeah. But so are the anti-Māori.
I think we're sick of it too.
Right.
I'm sick of it. I'm sick of hearing both Māori and non-Māori arguing about Te Reo.
Right.
You know,
That's interesting.
Whether or not I agree or disagree with what they're saying, I'm sick of that.
Yeah.
Because I know as a Maori language teacher, I feel that hinders development.
Sure.
And so for us as kaiako, when we're looking at creating solutions, we're a solution based.
Yeah.
We're in solution based problem solving time, and creating bridges. Because hey, look, New Zealand's changed. There was a time where it was a Maori Pākehā country, and now we've got all walks of different cultures coming in, which is great. You know, we need flavour, and diversity. But I think we're now stepping back and saying, oh gosh, you know, we're wanting to hold on to some part of our history, which so
is
be
our
it,
identity.
is our identity, and Te Reo Māori permeates through all of that. So we have non-Māori, Māori learning it. Foreigners, Asians learning Te Reo Māori. They see relevance in it, but also with that influx of foreign nationals or foreign people coming into Aotearoa, these people are bicultural, multilingual people.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it's normal for them to be able to learn a local dialect or language. And I think that they support that positive disposition towards learning extra languages. The more foreigners we have in here, the more multilingual people we have, the perception around language changes. And I know that I hear people saying, you know, and this is one of the ones I hear all the time, is why don't we spend our time teaching our children Asian and, you know, or all those other language? Great, do it. That's how I feel. Do it. But don't hide behind that, because it's easy for me to say, oh, I don't need to learn Te Reo, I'm going to teach my kids French, but then don't.
Most don't. Bro, in fact, everyone I've ever encountered, whether it's in person or online or whatever, who has said that, which is a common thing, we should be learning Mandarin because of economics. Okay, that's true.
Cool.
100% of them are not learning Mandarin, bro.
I know.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like that it's just a theory.
And I think that's also a reason why we are learning Te Reo Māori, because, okay, cool, that's neither here nor there. Right. But Te Reo is here. And it's a part, so we may as, you know,
the broader we...
My neighbours are Maori.
Yeah.
You know, or
just, bro, this is, I said it earlier, and I really believe this, and this is where it jumps in. It's not even about being Maori, it's about being New Zealanders. When we can broaden the value of it for who is this language, then if we broaden, and I believe we are slowly but surely, or kind of quickly but surely as well, is that we believe this is a New Zealand thing, then because...
Te Reo Māori is a New Zealand language, and I don't mean it as an indigenous language to Aotearoa. It's becoming a part of the way we communicate as Kiwis across the board. Right. You know, we all use the word "I'm going to mahi." Those little words that, you know, we may not think about those as being leaps and bounds of, you know, moving towards...
It's part of Kiwi English, you could say.
It's part of Kiwi English, and we don't recognise it until foreigners come in and say, you know, what's mahi?
What are you talking about?
You know,
that guy said tai ho. Even tai ho, like there's words that we think of as Kiwi slang or English Kiwi.
Tamariki is a word that they use a lot now. So now New Zealanders say, you know, especially, well, maybe it's a teacher thing, but they say tamariki mokopuna, or our children, our tamariki. Those are words that we're fostering into the New Zealand vernacular. English language.
That's right.
So that's also another hint that Te Reo Māori is shifting. Not to say that that's something that happened yesterday. No. It's been happening for a while now, but it's growing. And
going beyond kia ora and kapai.
Absolutely. I mean, from the 80s till now, Te Reo Māori, through the eyes of the lenses, has grown, you know, substantially. Not just in Maori TV, but, you know, look at the way the All Blacks do the haka now, and how not just the All Blacks, but students nationwide, non-Maori, performing the haka. You know, look at King's, you know, look at the hakas held between Nelson College for boys and King's College, which are full of non-Maori.
Predominantly, virtually
their disposition towards it is huge. You know, words like mana. You know, when we talk about mana, it's one of those words now in Aotearoa where it's not just Māori,
it's
leaking everywhere. And I think the leaks of the language are developing, are growing, and there's more of them.
Awesome.
So there is a positive light.
So your 20-year projection is generally very positive.
Very positive.
Because of time and people changing, demographics changing, attitudes building more positively. And I guess we haven't talked a lot about it, but just to quickly drop it in, access to the learning is blowing up too.
Oh, it has.
You know, so people are getting fewer and fewer excuses as to why they can't learn it.
Well, the courses are free to learn Te Reo Māori.
That's what I mean.
And by getting that tick box, it's opening up, you know, career opportunities and possibilities for people. So, and that's good. Like, I mean, if I'm a teacher, I want to do outdoor education, I can't find a course that's free to help me open up that door.
But in Maori,
Te Reo Maori, you can, and I
Yeah.
think people are jumping on top of that and
Awesome.
finding that. Or the makeup of our demographic is changing.
Yeah.
You know, there's half e kaiheres, there's half castes everywhere.
Yeah.
So
Koe te tahi.
that's right. You know, we've got Maori grandparents with Pākehā, you know, looking tamariki.
Oh, with Chinese, with
Absolutely,
yeah,
and they're
it's-
fostering and fostering in or bringing in that culture.
Yeah.
Where we're sitting down together as people. I
Yes.
think it is, and it was
Awesome,
Anyway,
bro.
so the state of it is that it's moving in towards a very positive space.
Ka pai, ka pai.
Absolutely.
He o ia anō, bro. Kānui tēnā koe mō tō whakaaro, mō whakaaro whānui, e pāniki tēnei kaupapa,
Kia
ka
ora.
pai, o whakaaro hohonu.
Tēnā
Thank you
koe.
so much, bro. It's really cool to talk to you about this. I mean, you and I have engaged in this type of kaupapa on and off for the last few years, but to actually sit you down and see where you're at, take a snapshot. And, you know, like I say, I'm interested in your opinion as a Māori person, as a relatively young Māori person who's a teacher.
Yep.
You know, like, there's not enough being talked about with people at the coalface of it. We're getting, and I mean, I'm appreciative of all of the different information we get from here, there, and everywhere. But once again, bro, ngā mihi.
Ngā mihi kia koe, tēnā koe.
Ka pai.
Kia ora e hoa.
Awesome, bro.